The next question is a very interesting question which everybody should know. Even forget about bank exam, in your own life this information will be very useful for you. Now the question is, the legal status of a nominee is that of what? The various options are given. He becomes absolute owner of the amount. He becomes co-owner with legal heirs. He cannot receive the amount from bank. He is entitled to receive the payment from the bank, but the claim of the legal heirs of the deceased depositor remains unaffected. So various options are given. Now what we have to find out ultimately is that what is the legal position of a nominee. Now let us understand who is a nominee. Now there is a person, Mr. A, he has a fixed deposit of 10 lakhs in the bank. Now suppose he dies. He has a fixed deposit, and before the maturity of the fixed deposit or even after the fixed deposit has matured, he dies. In the bank's record, the Mr. A's name will be there in the book, and then his address will be there, and his legal heirs. Bank will not know how Mr. A has died or when Mr. A has died. So his legal heirs, his wife, his children, they will know. Now the money belongs to the legal heirs as per our law, and therefore the legal heirs will come to the bank. In the good old days, before 1985, I am telling you, before 1985, they have to come to the bank and they will say, my father, that the Mr. A's son will come and say, sir, my father is Mr. A, he has died, here is his death certificate, we are the legal heirs, and we want to, please give us the money, we are suffering, and after the death of my father, there is no money in the house, we need money, please pay us immediately. Out of this 10 lakhs, at least 1 lakh you pay. But we cannot pay, because this the request of these successors must be approved and accepted, then only we can give. Therefore we will give him a big form, 7-page form, please fill up this form with all the attestation and all. So they have to fill up this form, then get attestation, required attestation, they should produce the death certificate, they should produce the succession certificate, sometimes we will ask for a court order, all these things depending upon the case to case basis, all these certificates will be attached, enclosed, and that form will be signed by all the legal heirs. You cannot exclude one. Suppose one person is in Singapore, you have to send the form to Singapore, get it signed by that fellow, and then bring it. So this will be given to the bank, and then the bank will, normally what happens is the branch manager will not have power, because these are all technical and legal issues. Normally a branch manager may not have this requisite expertise to decide the case himself, so we will forward it to the legal department of the bank, where there are some experts who will go into with the microscopic lens and find out who are the real legal heirs, and then finally they will give permission, this money may be paid. So by the time they see the color of the money, it will be 6 months. The legal heirs, who are the real owners, who are direly in need of the money. And on the part of the bank also, this entails unnecessary time waste for the bank. What is the productive purpose being served by looking into who is the legal heirs of Mr. A? What useful purpose it is going to serve for the bank? Therefore, 1985, they came out with the nomination rules were announced, under which a bank deposit could be nominated. Before that it was not there. The nomination was first, rules were announced by the government, and as a result a nomination was made possible for bank deposit. Now the purpose of nomination is not to decide the legal heirs of the deceased. This you should remember. Suppose Mr. A is there, same A, he has a 10 lakhs deposit. He has got a friend, Mr. X, who is the friend of Mr. A, and Mr. A nominates Mr. X as his nominee to receive the money in case of his death. The nomination is registered in the books of the bank. There is a small form, very simple to fill up, it's very easy to fill up. Please always tell your family members, whenever they give fixed deposit or any deposit for that matter in a bank, they should also fill up a nomination form. Sometimes people are very lazy, they just don't bother, simply they fill the main form. There will be a nomination form attached to that form itself, they won't fill it up. And in the bank also, many times the officers are very busy, they don't have time to tell all these things to the depositors. The depositors without nomination, they will fill and give it. As a result, no nomination will be received, even today many accounts. And if that fellow dies due to an accident, anybody can die today. The risk of life has become very increased. Then who will suffer? The legal heirs, his wife and son. By the time they receive the money, it will take 6 months to 1 year, sometimes 2 years. So to to get out of all these difficulties, the nomination rules provide an easy method for the bank, for the convenience of the bank. So Mr. A here will nominate Mr. X to receive the money. He will submit the nomination form, sign it, and on the death of Mr. A, the bank is discharged by giving the money deposited by Mr. A to Mr. X. Bank need not go into the question of who are the real legal heirs of the deceased. Insofar as the bank is concerned, the bank's responsibility is over the moment they pay the money to Mr. X. Now, the question is, can Mr. X use the money for himself? The answer is an emphatic no. We will see in detail when we are going to deal with the nomination. Suffice it to know now that Mr. X cannot touch a single pie of that money because he is receiving the money on behalf of the legal heirs. So Mr. X should account for every single pie of the money to the real legal heirs. Mr. A has got wife and son, one wife and two sons and two daughters. The real money belongs to them, not Mr. X. Mr. X cannot touch a single pie. Therefore, now come back to the question. The legal status of a nominee is that he is entitled to receive payment from the bank, but the claim of the legal heirs of the deceased depositor remains unaffected. The nominee is only a person who is holding the proceeds of the fixed deposit temporarily so that it can be handed over to the legal heirs when they claim. Nominee cannot make use of a single pie. So please understand this very, very intricate point before giving nomination to your bank deposits. Please advise your parents and others also accordingly. The nominee is holding a position of a trustee. He is holding the funds that he receives from the bank as a trust for and on behalf of the legal heirs of the deceased. The next question is, interest on fixed deposit is received on what basis? Or rather say, it is payable on what basis? Monthly, quarterly, half yearly, yearly basis. All of you know, if you take a housing loan, interest is debited every month. But if you open a fixed deposit with the same bank which has given you a housing loan, they will credit interest at what period? The interest on fixed deposit is payable quarterly. It is not payable monthly. Please understand. There are sometimes we get into some very strange problem because of this very important stipulation of Reserve Bank of India. There will be a person, an aged 60-year-old man who is retiring. He will get his retirement benefits. He will come to the bank and say, sir, I will deposit this 30 lakhs with you, keep it with you. Please pay me every month. I will keep it in fixed deposit for 5 years. But you please pay me every month interest because I have to survey every month. You cannot say I will pay only the quarterly because his need is that he needs it every month. But Reserve Bank of India very clearly has stipulated that interest is payable only quarterly. Then how do we help the poor fellow who wants it every month? His requirement is every month. So what banks do is, the banks must pay interest only every quarterly. So they will calculate quarterly interest. From that they will deduct some amount representing interest for this 1 month and 2 months. A small portion of the interest will be deducted, and that after deduction, that interest will be paid to the depositor. Suppose the interest payable is 3,000 rupees every quarter. Then every month you can pay 1,000 rupees. Every month the bank will not pay 1,000 rupees. 1,000 rupees less that portion of interest to be deducted for 2 months. It may be 5 rupees, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, depending upon the case. It will be deducted. Remaining amount will be only payable to the depositor. Please always remember, interest on fixed deposit is payable quarterly. There is also another aspect of it, which also you should know. If you go and open, many times what happens, customers come to the bank, they come and say, sir, I want to open a fixed deposit for 10 lakhs. So bank officer also simply will give the fixed deposit form, open it. Now, unless you instruct the bank to pay the interest quarterly, to credit the interest quarterly, it will not be done automatically. You have to expressly instruct the bank, please credit the interest to my savings bank account. Many times what people will say, sir, here is 10 lakhs, you please keep it. I will come after 5 years. You give me with the interest. I will use it for my daughter's wedding. I will use it for my son's education, or I will use it for my daughter's education. He is a poor man. He is a common man. He does not know that every day. So what will happen? If you simply put it in fixed deposit, interest every quarter will be accumulating. Interest on interest, he is not eligible. When he comes at the end of the 5th year, he will receive a very small amount. He will not get the benefit of interest on interest. So further, the banks have opened some new fixed deposit scheme called reinvestment plan or Kamadhenu deposit. Each bank has got its own terminology. Some banks call it as reinvestment, some banks call it as Kamadhenu deposit. Now, whenever a person comes to you after you join the bank, whenever a person comes to you and says, I want to open a fixed deposit, you tell him that if in case you open a reinvestment plan, interest is automatically credited to that account every quarter. As a result, it will start earning interest. So if you are going to keep it for 5 years, it's a long period for which the interest accumulation on interest will be a huge amount. Why should the poor depositor lose all? Because he is ignorant. He is innocent. He does not know the rules of the bank. It is the bank's responsibility, especially the frontline officers and the frontline staff responsibility to educate the customer and tell him, sir, don't go for fixed deposit. In this, it will not, interest on interest will not be automatically paid. Your purpose is you will come after 5 years. For 5 years, it unnecessarily interest will be lying without earning any further interest. Therefore, you go for reinvestment plan or Kamadhenu deposit, where interest on interest you will get, and ultimately you will end up with a substantial difference. So this customer will be very happy. Always please remember, put the customer's welfare before and then take a decision. It is in the long-term interest of the bank. So the sum and substance of what I have told you is interest on fixed deposit payable only quarterly. You cannot pay monthly or once in 15 days or any other terms. And if interest is not paid in fixed deposit, automatically it will not result in interest on interest. Therefore, if you want the facility of interest on interest, you should go for reinvestment plan or Kamadhenu deposit. Every bank has got its own pet name for this deposit. You ask the bank branch manager or the frontline staff, they will tell you and open the deposit like that.